Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is Friday, hope you all are doing well. I want to talk about Everton's board today. Now this could easily become a little bit of a rant, a little bit of a long hour-long conversational rant about Everton's board and what they're doing wrong and why things should be done differently and what's going on at the football club and why it's such a mess and, why we haven't really progressed in the 5 years that Farhad Moshiri has been in charge of Everton. But I don't really want it to be like that, to be perfectly honest with you. Hang on, let me just put my my computer on Do Not Disturb because it was going off there. I don't really want it to be like that. I want it to be more of a concise sort of discussion really and conversation about the priorities of Everton's board at the moment. The title of this live stream is Let's Talk, Is Football a Priority for Everton's board? And that's a title that might confuse a few people, and that's a title that might make a few people think, oh, I'm not clicking on this video, it doesn't even make sense. But bear with me with it because it mightn't make any sense whatsoever. You might be sitting there thinking, of course football's a priority for Everton's board. We're a football club, Everton Football Club. They're board members, they're shareholders, they're directors, they're employees of a football club. Of course the football club, of course the football on the pitch is a priority, but I have serious questions as to whether or not that is the case, to be honest with you, and there's various different reasons for that. We're going to talk about the stadium in today's live stream and how well the club have dealt with the stadium and the progress of the stadium and the communication between the club and us as fans in regards to the stadium. I want to talk about the football at the moment on the pitch, failed transfer windows, Marcel Brands, some quotes from certain members of the Everton board, and just ultimately I suppose where we are as a football club. Now I could sit here and talk for hours on end on Everton's board and Farhad Moshiri and what he has failed to do and what he's not failed to do, and Marcel Brands of a similar conversation, and Bill Kenwright, and I could sit here and do a 24-hour live stream ranting and raving about Everton's board and why things need to change and why certain people need moving out the football club, but I'm not going to do that because A, it'd go on forever, and B, I want to keep it to sort of a as I said, a constructive, concise conversation about this one thing in particular, and that is the priorities of the board and whether or not football falls in those priorities, because I think it's a really important conversation to be had. And the thing that sort of kicked this off in my mind to have this conversation in the first place really was the football on the pitch, I suppose, and what we're watching at the moment. And again, there's been a couple of sound bites from various different members of the board that have gotten to me and made me think over the last few weeks. Not relatively new sound bites, but certainly ones that have been about for a while that have just made me double think about what's going on at the football club at the moment. But let's start on a positive. Let's start with the stadium. Obviously Everton announced some years ago now that they were looking to build a brand new 52,888 capacity stadium on the banks of the Royal Blue Mersey, Bramley-Moore dock. And it's been a very long process from then, when it was first sort of spoken about and first sort of rumoured, to where we are now. And it's going to be an even longer process from where we are now to obviously when the stadium is built and we're all sitting there cheering on the Blues in the new stadium. But the stadium for me is and everything surrounding the stadium, the way the club have dealt with it, the way the club dealt with the planning permission, the questions they were put. And I remember sitting here and watching the meeting with Liverpool City Council where the club presented the stadium and the plans, and they answered every question that the council had, and they were ready for every curveball that was thrown at them. And it was a real professional and really well done piece and really well done presentation from Colin Chong, who of course is in charge of everything to do with the stadium and Everton Football Club as a whole. And it's such a contrast when you think about Bramley-Moore, isn't it? Because you think about how the club have dealt with Bramley-Moore, the communication that we've had as fans. We've had multiple public consultations. There was buildings, there was sort of vans in town that allow people to go and check out the new stadium and have their say on it. There was various different points where we as fans were able to give our thoughts and what we liked and what we didn't like. They sent out a consultation about the suites in the stadium and whether or not people would be interested in getting one of the hospitality suites and all of this sort of stuff. It's been absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I cannot fault the club one bit in the way in which they've dealt with Bramley-Moore and how things have been so far. From not only a communication standpoint with fans, but also the way in which they've dealt with, obviously, every single step, getting the planning permission, obviously more recently, gaining access to the dock and being able to build on it, and work has been progressing very quickly there as well. The original designs from Dan Myers that were released, the way in which they were released, it's been absolutely fantastic. But you look at the way the stadium has been sort of dealt with, and I suppose the way in which the club have communicated the stadium and the process of and the project of Bramley-Moore, and you compare that to the football on the pitch in those years that since Bramley-Moore has become a thing, and it's a massive contrast. Everton haven't improved in the 5 years that Farhad Moshiri has come into the football club. Now, Farhad Moshiri come into the football club, and one thing that he really spoke about was wanting to move Everton into a new stadium, wanting a new stadium to be sort of the forefront of his ownership and the forefront of his leadership. And at the time, I think we all sort of thought, yeah, that's sound, we'll get a new stadium. Obviously, we're going to improve because we're going to spend hundreds of millions of pounds on players, left, right and centre. So we'll have a new stadium, we'll have a boss team, everything will be dead boss. Now, I don't think we sort of quite thought about the fact that maybe the stadium was going to take more of a priority than the football on the pitch. And I feel as an Evertonian, and look, this is just an opinion. This is my opinion. You might have a different opinion. Your mate might have a different opinion. Your dad might have a different. This is just my opinion. I feel at the moment that the priority of Everton's board and Everton Football Club is solely on Bramley-Moore dock. What's happening on the pitch is barely in consideration, and that's why they've given the managerial job to such a professional manager in Rafa Benitez, who is very solid, almost guaranteed to keep us afloat. Mightn't get us into Europe, but he probably won't get us relegated. He'll keep us there or thereabout in the Premier League until the stadium move. They've not brought in a manager that's a risk because they know they'd have to prioritise and focus on the footballing side of things in that sense. They've not brought in a manager who, is going to cost far too much money, because that might come into play. They've brought in a manager who probably isn't costing that much money and is very solid in what, we know he can bring and what we know he can do. However, as I said, the contrast between the way in which the club have dealt with Bramley-Moore and the way in which the club have dealt with the football on the pitch is mad, in my opinion. It's so mad. We've spent hundreds of millions of pounds on players in Farhad Moshiri's tenure, and I'm not going to sit here and say we haven't. We have. The majority of that money has been wasted on bang average players. I think for a large part of that tenure, Farhad Moshiri was in charge of making decisions. It's become quite clear recently and over the years that Farhad Moshiri isn't really a footballing man. Unbelievable businessman. You don't become a billionaire without being an unbelievable businessman, but just because you're an unbelievable businessman doesn't mean that you know everything about football. I could be a multi-billionaire and go and buy an NFL team. I haven't got a clue about NFL. I've never watched an NFL game in my life. I don't know any of the teams. I don't know any of the players. I don't know how much players are worth. I haven't got a jar of glue about it. So just because you've got a lot of money and you're very successful in one, in one sense, in one, what's the word I'm looking for, sector of business, doesn't mean that success can be automatically transmitted, or transported into another sector and be done at the same level. I don't think Farhad Moshiri is as much of a footballing, sort of guy, if you like, as many people maybe want him to be. I'm not saying he hasn't got a clue about football, but I certainly don't think he's the level of football knowledge that a Premier League side need to be challenging for league titles and championships. Certainly, when we're spending as much as Everton are spending. He obviously found that, I think he sort of got onto that, and that's why he brought in Steve Walsh and Ronald Koeman. At the time, they seemed like decent appointments. Steve Walsh had gone to Leicester and done brilliantly, and obviously come to Everton and was an absolute shambles. Ronald Koeman, very similar, done okay at Southampton, come to Everton and it didn't work. And Ronald Koeman and Steve Walsh's tenure, I think, put Everton back about 5 or 10 years. I think we're still seeing the suffering of that period of time in Everton's lifespan, not only in regards to players, but in terms of the money we spend during that period, the wages we spend on players. We're still seeing this current Everton team in 2021, managed by Rafa Benitez, being affected by the decisions that Steve Walsh and Ronald Koeman made 4, 5, 6 years ago, which isn't great to see whatsoever. But we made those mistakes. We then brought in Marcel Brands, another footballing man, somebody that I think Farhad Moshiri could maybe employ to make his decisions for him. And at the minute, look, Marcel Brands is another discussion. I sat in the summer not that long ago and spoke about Marcel Brands and in his new contract and spoke about why I felt it was a positive. Now I sort of sit here and think I don't really know what the point in Marcel Brands being at the football club is. I really don't know, and that's the truth of it. I don't know. You know, we were told in the summer that he was going to lead the recruitment side for the new manager. We then found out via multiple articles after Rafa Benitez was employed that he didn't really have a say on the new manager. We've known for years and years and years that Marcel Brands is needed to go out there and bring in a right back. Seamus Coleman, we've known for a long time is been coming towards the end of his time as a first team player at Everton Football Club. Still, that hasn't been addressed. Is that a case of Marcel Brands failing in his job, or is he maybe not being allowed to make the decisions that he's wanted to make? I don't really know why Marcel Brands is at Everton, to be honest with you. I don't, because he's either not allowed to do the job that he wants to do, or he's not doing it anywhere near good enough. That's the only two outcomes and decisions I can think to make about Marcel Brands at the moment, is that he's either not doing his job properly because he's not being allowed to, or he's not good enough to, because there's no way, shape or form that the summer was acceptable whatsoever. Not bringing in a right back, not addressing the issues that we needed to address. It's not good enough. But as I said, we spoke again in the summer, done a number of live streams talking about the communication between the club and the fans. Why isn't there any communication? Why aren't we as a fan base being able to sit here and say, we're communicated. Why aren't the club coming out and Marcel Brands coming out and saying, listen, this is these are the decisions I want to make. I brought in this player because of this. I brought in that player because of that. Why isn't he talking to us? Why isn't he having those conversations with us? Again, complete contrast to the Everton, side of communication with the stadium, where we're finding out everything. Every time somebody moves on Bramley-Moore dock, we get an update on it. And again, I'm not complaining. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But it just seems like Bramley-Moore dock and the new stadium of Bramley-Moore dock and Everton Football Club on the pitch, it's two completely different entities, completely different entities, and that is worrying because it says to me that a lot of, for me in my opinion anyway, and again this is just my opinion, a lot of the effort of the board, a lot of the effort of the higher ups at the football club is going towards the stadium, and the footballing side of things isn't even, as I said, a priority. That's why I've questioned it. Is football a priority for Everton? Because as good as the stadium is and looks and will be when it's up, we can't just hold our hat on the stadium. I'm not willing as an Evertonian to go to Goodison Park week in, week out for the next 3-4 years until the stadium's built and watch awful football, players that don't care, that are overpaid, that aren't interested, and the board be happy with that because we're building a new stadium. Because what fucking does it matter? We could be sitting in Bramley-Moore dock in 4 years' time playing in League fucking 1 if we keep going how we're going. The manager could get sacked as fans turn against him. The players still aren't interested. They're still letting down manager after manager after manager. There's no point in having a brand spanking boss new stadium if no one wants to go and sit in it because Everton have been shit for the last however many years. Or we're sitting and playing league, in the championship because of how bad we've been. Football has to take a priority. Football has to take the forefront. The stadium is great. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And you know what? I commend Farhad Moshiri massively because he come into this football club and he said, I will build this club a new stadium. I will build a new stadium while I'm here. And he's doing it. And it will be done. And that's absolutely fantastic. But if you would have said to, I think, a lot of Everton fans in 2014-15, before Farhad Moshiri took over, listen, we're going to get a new investor here. He's going to spend 800 million, or not 800 million, he's going to spend 400 million on players. He's going to leave us massively in debt. We'll get a new stadium, but we won't really be anywhere. Because let's be honest, before Farhad Moshiri come in, we'd finished 5th under under Roberto Martinez. I think we finished something like 11th, 12th the season after. And then he come in. Since then, we've finished 8th, I think once, 12th, couple of times, 10th a couple of times. We haven't improved whatsoever is the point I'm trying to make. In the footballing sense, we haven't improved. As a football club, we have in regards to the stadium, because that will be a massive improvement for the football club and it'll bring in an awful lot of money for the club and the city. But on the pitch, I love the new stadium. I think it's going to be brilliant. I think it's going to be amazing. I can't wait to sit in it. But if I'm being perfectly honest with you, I'm not really asked about a load of bricks and a load of diggers that is placed on Bramley-Moore dock at the moment. I'm asked about why these players aren't giving it 110% week in, week out when we're watching them. I don't go and sit on me Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock and watch the work at Bramley-Moore for 2.5 hours and leave going, we're a boss football club, we're in a great state. I go the match and watch this Everton team put in dross performance after dross performance and go, we're the shambles at the moment. And I've seen a lot more people in the last couple of days and weeks, certainly over the last couple of weeks with results on Twitter, social media, Instagram, Facebook, all of that sort of stuff, saying, something along the likes of, if it wasn't for the stadium, I wouldn't be bothered. I wouldn't be going to the match. If it wasn't for the stadium, I'd give me season ticket up. If it wasn't for the new stadium, I wouldn't be interested. And that's really, really, really disappointing to hear, because I do feel like there's and Twitter, Facebook, social media, and Instagram isn't a reflection of the entire Everton fan base whatsoever, but I do feel like there's a selection of fans now, and this selection of fans is only growing, that very much have that mentality of, well, if it wasn't for the new stadium, I'm not that arsed, to be honest. I wouldn't be going. I wouldn't be going. And that's dangerous. That's a dangerous mentality to have, because the atmosphere at Goodison, I think this is a big part of the atmosphere at Goodison. If you're going to the ground every week thinking, can't really be arsed being here, I'm paying 500 quid to watch dross performance after dross performance, but I know that if I give me season ticket up, I won't be able to get a seat in the new stadium, and I want a seat in the new stadium, then you're not going to be wanting to jump up, sing, shout, scream. You're going because, again, as I said, you're going through the motions before we move out into Bramley-Moore. Again, big part, don't get me wrong, again, the performances on the pitch and the decisions made by the board and the, the manager and stuff having an impact on the atmosphere. But if Evertonians are feeling like they're only going to Goodison to watch Everton because the new stadium's in the horizon, then surely that is having a massive effect on the atmosphere at Goodison Park, as well as, how we're feeling towards the team. Let's ask ourselves this. If we weren't getting a new stadium and the board weren't looking at selling or moving out, and the manager or the director of football was still going to be in the job and the manager was still going to be in the job, would we still be going to watch Everton week in, week out? I don't know. I really, really don't know. I think back to when I was a kid, the Everton teams that I watched as a kid under David Moyes always battled, always fought, always give it 110%. They were never great. They were never even half decent, but they always give everything they had. They always battled, fought, give their all, worked hard, made sure that they made a nuisance in themselves. And I went to Goodison week in, week out, falling in love with those Everton teams. Coming out of Goodison, a lot of times, having been battered, beaten, lost heavily, but I come out thinking, yeah, we're just not as good as them, but we're Everton. We work hard, we battle, we fight with Everton. I'm proud to be an Evertonian. I love this football club. I'm not leaving Goodison thinking that anymore. I'm leaving Goodison thinking, what's this Everton team? What have we become? You've got players on £100,000 a week, waltzing round, looking like they're not arsed. You've got players who, again, can turn up one week and be brilliant and can turn up the next week and be awful. The atmosphere is poor. We haven't progressed in any sense since David Moyes left the football club in 2013. We've gotten into Europe twice since then, and both times we were in Europe, we either left the competition quickly or our form in the league was hindered massively. We haven't progressed at all since Farhad Moshiri, on the football pitch, since Farhad Moshiri has come into the football club. Not one jot. And this isn't a anti-Farhad Moshiri live stream. It's not get him out, move on, because he's come in, he said he's going to get us a new stadium, he's getting us a new stadium, boss. But there is serious worries about what's going on the football pitch. For me, there certainly is, because I think the way in which the club are dealing with the stadium, the communication with the stadium, the project of the stadium, compare that to the way in which the club are dealing with what's going on the pitch, it almost says to me like they're thinking, as long as we're still in the Premier League, we're not really asked about what happens on the pitch. Let's just build a stadium and then move on from that. As I said, I want to talk about some of the sound bites from certain members of the Everton board recently that have just baffled me. Absolutely baffled me. There seems to be, in certain people in the board, there seems to be an air of, and this is what's most worrying, it's an air of that Everton are in a good position at the moment, Everton are doing well, that things are going okay, that everything's perfect. I was speaking to Baz from Toffee TV the other day, and we were speaking about the fact that Everton done Denise Barrett-Baxendale, when she come into the football club a couple of years ago, done a full review of everything Everton, I can't remember what it's called, head and tail review or something like that, review of the entirety of Everton Football Club from top to bottom, players, staff, managers, directors of football, board members, everything from top to bottom. She's done a complete review of it, and nobody got sacked. Nobody got sacked. Nobody lost the job. Nobody was moved on. Now, that tells me that everything at Everton is fine. We're winning the league every year. We're competing in the Champions League every year. We're winning cup competitions. We're signing the best players. Players want to come and play for us. Every player that puts that Everton shirt on is giving it 110%. That's what that says to me. Don't know about anybody watching. Let us know in the live comments. We'll be getting in the live comments in a moment. But that's what it says to me. If you're a CEO of a football club and you're doing a front and central review of the whole football club and you're determining that nobody, not even one person, is not doing their job to the best of their ability to the point where they could be moved on for that, then everything's going well, isn't it? We're winning the league every year. We're winning the Champions League. But we're not. That's the point. We're not. So how can you do a full review of the whole club and nobody lose their job when it's very clear that there's a lot of people at this football club who don't do their job properly? It's a sort of jobs for boys mentality. It's a sort of, you turn up at Everton, you almost act like you're working hard or you're doing something, or you act like you're busy, and then that's all right. You get along with it. You know, Bill Kenwright coming out a year or so ago, if even that, saying, you know, I've had it from good authority from a lot of Premier League, you know, a lot of big Premier League club owners saying that whenever they're in a bad situation, they think, what would Everton do? Now, I've mentioned that quote a couple of times and I've took the piss out of it, saying, oh, because the clubs I think would do the opposite. But let's have a little serious conversation about that quote, because I think it does need a serious conversation. Why does Bill Kenwright think it's acceptable to have a mentality of that we do everything fine because other clubs, and even if that's true, why is it fine that other clubs are coming to Everton thinking, what would Everton do? It's like this sense of, we're perfect, we do nothing wrong, everything is spot on, it's dead right, we're boss, we're amazing, because other clubs come to us and think, what would Everton do? Why isn't Bill Kenwright saying, you know what would Everton do? Well, in the 80s, Everton would win league titles. In the 70s, Everton would win the league year after year. In the 80s, we were one of the best teams in Europe, beating Bayern Munich in the semi-final, winning European Cup, Winners' Cup, winning the FA Cup all, consistently. Having teams that are battle fight, players that cared, players that wanted to play for the shirt, managers that understood the club throughout, through in and out. That's what Everton do, and we're not doing it at the moment. So you go and seek advice elsewhere. But it's not. It's like we're so good at doing everything because other clubs are coming to us and asking for advice. It's that self-entitled mentality of everything's fine at this football club when it's not. It's not fine at this football club whatsoever. And it's not just Bill Kenwright. I feel like there is a number of people within this football club at board level and above, board level and below, that feel like, that almost sit there and watch this video and think, what's he going on about? Everything's working fine at the football club. Everything's all right. Everyone does the job to the best of their ability. Everyone's great. Well, it's not, is it? Because we've spent £400 million and we're worse than what we were before we spent the money. We've got players that are on 120, 130 grand a week who don't give a shit. We've been through 4 or 5 managers in the last 4, 5, 6 years. So clearly everything isn't going right, because that's not how a football club should be run. We're failing to recruit in key areas. We've got a director of football who's failed to bring in a right back for the last 2, 3, 4 years. So it's not going all right, is it? And this is my big worry that I have with the football club. Anyway, if you're enjoying so far, please do hit that like button. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe. I said that I don't want this to be a rant, because if anybody at the club is watching, which they won't be, but if there's any chance that somebody is, then they're not going to sit here and listen to me ranting and raving, swearing and shouting. I want it to be a concise, calm discussion about everything, and as I said, there's a lot more to talk about the board and certain members and what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. But I just feel like at the moment, the whole point of this video is I personally feel like football isn't a priority for the football club. I feel like the stadium is the number one priority, and Rafa Benitez is almost being given the task of, you just sort everything to do with the football inside and just make sure we don't get relegated, and then that's sound. We're just going to focus on how boss the stadium is. If they can come out and tell us every 10 minutes about somebody using the Portaloo on Bramley-Moore, why can't Marcel Brands come out and do an interview about why we failed to bring in a right back? If they can come out and present such a fantastic presentation about Bramley-Moore and how it's going to be built, and answer every single question that anybody's got about it, why can't they come out and present to us what's going on the pitch, how we're going to improve, how we're going to get better? It says to me that a lot of energy from Everton's higher ups is going into the stadium, and not a lot of it is going into the footballing side of things. Anyway, let's get into some of the live comments before we finish up. Delamere says, immediate return, well in, is right, my mate. Whammy says, makes total sense. Cam, cheers, mate. Stephen says, yo, Cam, we're poo, mate. Going to get slammed by Spurs. Let's hope not. Whammy says, I don't know, Stephen. Tottenham are pretty poo too. And Anders says, I just don't understand why Marcel Brands won't have an interview. Why does it feel like everything must be done in secrecy, even though they've been incredibly vocal about the stadium? And that's my point. That is my point for this stadium. If you were to take away the name Everton Football Club, and you were to look at the Bramley-Moore project and the way in which the Bramley-Moore project has been dealt with and communicated and managed, and you were to look at the football on the pitch and the transfers and recruitment and the way in which that has been dealt with and managed, you would think it was a completely different football club. You really, really would. The players are to be fired up with Conte, says Stephen. Yes. Whammy says, even if it is football, are they capable of delivering decisions like loaning out Moise Keane and Conquer and bringing in Rondon, not signing right back, thinking Kabam is a centre-mid cover? Well, again, it's a very good point. It is a very, very, very good point. Because ultimately you're right. You're absolutely right. It doesn't matter what the board wants or what the board are aiming for. You know, Alan Myers put a tweet out, and I agree with Alan Myers. He put a tweet out saying, do people really think that the board don't want to be a success? Do people think that the board actively are going out there to make Everton not a success, to make Everton lose? And I don't think that's the case whatsoever. I think it's a mix of the board not knowing what they're doing, and as I said, this mentality of this other clubs come to Everton when things aren't going well mentality is board members trying to justify that they're doing a good enough job at Everton, and the only way they seem to be able to justify that at the moment is with the stadium, because the stadium is brilliant and everything's going well. They can't justify it on the pitch because we're, you know, utter dross and we've got overpaid players and we've wasted so much money over the years. So it's justified in the stadium work, which would make sense as to why a lot of work is going into the stadium and not a lot is going on to what's happening on the football pitch. But you're right, I don't think that Marcel Brands or Denise Barrett-Baxley or Farhad Moshiri or Bill Kenwright are actively wanting to make Everton a failure or not wanting to improve Everton. I just have massive, massive questions of whether they're capable of improving Everton. They're capable of making those footballing decisions. And if they're not, and whoever in that block of directors and board members isn't, needs to leave, because it's a football club. Beyond anything, a new stadium is boss, the kits every year, great, the merchandise boss, you know, the sponsorships with socios and all of that stuff, great. But beyond anything, we as fans I don't sit here and do these live streams because Everton are getting a new stadium. I don't sit here and do these live streams because our kit looks decent every year. I don't sit here and do these live streams because we've got a new sponsorship with Monster Energy. We don't sit and spend £500, £600 a year, sometimes upwards, because, you know, Everton have announced, you know, a new sponsorship with a business or something. We sit here and I do these videos and we go to the match and we watch the game and we're so invested because of the footballing side of things. We're a football club. Before anything else, we're a football club. And I think that has been lost with the club at the moment. Delamere Bay says, don't know if I was reading too much into it, but thought Dom on Monday Night Football made some point about Everton not giving youth a chance and there's major issues with managers, situations and staff. I didn't hear it, mate, to be honest with you, but if he did, I'm sure it would have been picked up on by now. And Anders says, also, what is Marcel Brands' job at the club? It appears like he has bypassed in most manager appointments and in some transfers as well. Yeah. What is Marcel Brands' job at the football club? I don't know. As I said before, my stance on Marcel Brands is that he's either not doing his job properly and therefore not doing it to the ability we need him to, or he's not being allowed to. Either way, it's not working for Everton. Delamere says, paying the likes of Sandro Ramirez and Koa King's ransom like they did will haunt Everton for years to come. I agree. Whammy says, the list is impressive. The one we may not mention, Balassi, Walcott, Tossin, Klassen, Schneidlin, Kabaman, Awobi, Delph, Besic, Rondon, James, King, Keane. There is an endless list of bad Everton business. Yeah, I would agree. Gonna watch a Woeful and Holgate think up the new stadium, says Whammy. And Anders says, watch Sunderland documentary on Netflix if you want to know what happens when you don't invest in the team properly and keep appointing new managers. It could get sticky really, really quickly for Everton. It really, really could. And as I said, we could be sitting here in 3-4 years' time, sitting in Bramley-Moore. Looks boss. Looks exactly like the club told us it was going to look. It's absolutely amazing. But we're watching Everton play Macclesfield Town in League 2 because there hasn't been that focus on improving the footballing side of things. Good show, Dan Hernandez. Rob Wells hilarious, says Whammy. Paul says, what's the point in a brand new spanking stadium if your team is as shite as Sunderland and Derby? Yeah, we're a boss football club, we're putting sand in the hole, says Whammy. Paul says, when was the last time we didn't make a loss on a player? Lukaku, says Delamere. Garner Gay. I think, was the last time. Ghana gay. And Ander says, also, they are finally raising the season ticket prices, but the product you're paying for is getting worse. Inflation at its best. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. You know. Again, that's another issue, isn't it? Wormy says, yeah, but you get Pavlov's dogged into being there. Hey, Charm says, Wormy. Delamere says, I missed the days when you had the likes of Baines, Pienaar, Kale to run through walls for you. Exactly, we just haven't got that anymore. And as I said in the preview to the Spurs game before, if you haven't checked out that preview, by the way, please do so after this live stream. It'll only take a second. There's no excuse. There's no excuse for not running through brick walls. There's not one football player on this planet who can say to me with an honest and open face that they're not good enough to give it 100%. Every player is good enough to give it 110%, and I think there's a lot of players at Everton that don't do that. We'll have the best stadium in the Championship, so there's that, says Semi. Gamba says, still waiting for a free coffee mug. From who? From me or from Everton? Paul says, at least before I had a team full of battlers. When you watch training videos, they look like they're going through the motions, and having a laugh is not good enough. Yeah, I agree. We'll lose 3 or 4-0 on Sunday, says Everton, Florida. Hopefully not. But if we're not in the Premier League, says Semi. Paul says, being the Saints has been 26 years since last trophy, and we look like we're getting further from it yeah, exactly. And you've got key members of the board coming out saying everything's sound because other clubs come to us for advice. 26, we're the 4th biggest club in England, in English football history, 26 years without a trophy. I don't want to hear anything from the board unless they're saying, listen, this isn't good enough at the minute, we need to improve. Don't come out here and try and blag that everything's going well and everything's sound and it's all boss. It's fucking not. Semi says, but I do agree the problem started at the top. They absolutely start at the top. They start at the top and they trickle down to the bottom in any company, in any sense of any sense. Hernandez says, if you buy a company that's bankrupt and needs to sell, why would you keep the entire staff when you take over? When else in life is that philosophy applicable? Absolutely, mate. Gamba says, why spend so much money on a new stadium if people at the top don't care about the bottom line? Yes. Dalamir says, Everton versus Blackburn playoff finals at Wembley 2023. There you go. Semi says, get those likes in for our man Canvey. Well, thank you very much. If you could hit that like button, it would mean a great deal to me. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe. Paul says, just need to hope don't get relegated. It's hard to get back in the Premier League. That's Notts Forest and Sheffield Wednesday. Yeah. Yo says, Jebbo, what's happening, my mate? Bobski says, what is it really that is going on? We've blamed the media, the manager, the director of football, the owner, and even us fans. How do we as a club rectify this? If I had the idea, mate, if I had the solution, I'd be on Everton's board. I don't have the solution, but what I do know is things aren't going right, and I will not stand for anybody at the football club, whether you're Marcel Brands, Denise Barrett, Baxendale, Bill Kenwright, Farhad, Moshiri, telling me that things are going right, because they're not. Sam says, I'm honestly done with the club, Cam, until there's major changes behind the scene. Said it before, these players are absolutely toxic by 3 or 4 shitbags. Can't disagree, mate. Gamba says, they always have someone watching all the Everton YouTube videos for input on how they can counter criticism. Well, if anybody's watching from Everton now, do us a favour, message me and convince me that things at the football club, beyond the stadium, put the stadium to one side, that things at the football club are going well and positively. And if you can convince me, then I'll buy a box in the posh area every year for the next 10 years, because you won't be able to convince me. Ned says, yes, come and see you tonight, lad. What's happening, my mate? See you there. He also says, people blame Koeman for putting us in a mess, but since then we've had a bloke who spent 30 million on a Wobie, and that bloke given a new contract in the summer. Exactly. Who does Marcel Brands answer to? We are going to do a separate video on Marcel Brands again over the next couple of weeks or so. It'll be during the international break, but who does Marcel Brands answer to? Who's his boss? Is it just sort of like Marcel Brands can do what he likes and he won't get any, he won't get any criticism, or he won't get any construction? Does Marcel Brands have supervisions? Does he have appraisals? Or is it just treated as that he's an owner of the club, so it doesn't matter? Who does he have to answer to for the decisions that he makes? Then it says, have other club boards got good relationships with the fans? They have. Ultimately, Crimson says, we'll be the next Sunderland if we don't book our ideas up, or boss, because it was in the pockets. And Tom says, we made about 800 grand profit on Bernard. Well, yeah. There you go, minimum. But there you go, look, as I said, it was only going to be a little short one, this one. I just wanted to express some of my concerns about the board and the priorities of the board, because the way the stadium is being handled compared to the way the football on the pitch is being handled is an absolute complete contrast. If you have enjoyed this one, please hit that like button. It does only take a second. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe. Once again, a massive thank you to everybody in the live comments. for watching and getting involved. I really, really do appreciate it. If you're watching a YouTube video, give your thoughts down below and we will get involved with as many of them as possible. Don't forget to check out our game preview ahead of Everton's Premier League fixture on Sunday against Tottenham Hotspur. That is live on the channel now to check out. If you could give that a watch and a little like, that would be absolutely brilliant. We will be back on Sunday afternoon with the game review and the instant match reaction. Sorry, the instant match reaction and the player ratings to the Tottenham game. So look out for those. Dennis says, alright Cam, we all need to pool our money as fans and buy 51% of the club, even if it takes decades. We need our club back. Yeah. You're doing the sleep out, says Crimson. I'm not doing it this year, my mate. I'm going to do it next year. Peter says, looks to me that the board are fully committed to the new stadium and not the squad. Is Moshiri looking to sell? That's another big question for a different video. Definitely, mate, definitely. I think you've got a point. See you guys, says Wormy. See you, Wormy says Semi, 100% says Crimson. And Semi says, thanks, Cam. Take care, everyone. Big thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this one, leave a like. As I said, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Toffee TV says, Wagwan, what's happening? What's happening? I don't know if it's Ned or Ped or Baz, but what's happening? It'd be interesting, actually, because I've spoken to the lads at Toffee TV, Ped, Baz, Ned, over the last few weeks. We've spoke heavily about the board and what their, what their priorities are and ultimately whether or not they care about the footballing side of things, or is it just about get the new stadium in and then people are going to get out and make some money on the club? I don't know, but the reality is, as I said before, nobody at this football club could convince me that other than the stadium, things are done in the right manner, because they're just not. And Bobsky says, nice one, Cam. It's interesting in your point of view. Thank you very much, my mate. Dennis says, have a good weekend, everyone. Cheers. And Crimson says, later, pal. Thank you very much. If you've enjoyed it, leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues. Cheers for watching. See you after.